I should have ignored the note. I still wonder how different things would have been if I had just thrown it away. But there it was, pinned to my apartment door when I came home from work. 4 words, scribbled in jagged black ink. Do you see it? At first, I thought it was a joke, a prank by one of the college kids down the hall. I rolled my eyes, crumpled it up, and stepped into my 1-bedroom apartment. But the handwriting, it wasn't playful or messy. It felt urgent. By the time I poured myself a glass of wine and settled on the couch, the note was already forgotten, at least until I saw the light in the apartment across the hall. It flickered once, twice. Then it stayed on. That place had been empty for weeks. I know because the landlord had been complaining about the last tenant leaving without paying rent. No one had moved in since. But now, the window was glowing faintly, a warm amber that spilled onto the hallway floor through the gap under the door. I couldn't help myself. I turned off my lights, inching closer to the peephole. My heart skipped. There was someone standing in the window. Just a silhouette, motionless, staring out toward the street. It wasn't unusual to see shadows, but this one was wrong. Too tall, too thin, with a head that didn't quite match the proportions of a human figure. The lights flickered again, and the silhouette was gone. The next morning, I asked the landlord about it. Has someone rented 3B? He shook his head. Nope, it's still empty. I didn't tell him what I saw. What could I even say? Instead, I convinced myself I'd imagined it, a trick of tired eyes after a long day. But the notes didn't stop. The next one came 2 days later, this time tucked into my mailbox. It's watching you too. I started locking my door at all hours, even during the day. I kept the blinds shut. Yet every time I glanced at the door across the hall, I felt it watching me, like a pressure in the air, a weight on my chest. At night, the light would come on again, always after midnight, always flickering, and each time I saw the figure in the window. Sometimes it would shift, just slightly, like it was leaning closer to the glass. 3 days after the first note, I couldn't take it anymore. I stayed up until 2 a.m., pacing my living room, staring at the door to 3B through the peephole. The light flickered on. I grabbed my phone and dialed the landlord's number, but before I could press call, I heard it, a knock, not on my door, on its door. I froze. Another knock. Louder this time. Slowly, I crept toward the peephole, holding my breath. My hand trembled as I pressed my eye to the glass. Someone was standing outside 3B, their back to me. A woman, maybe mid-30s, with long tangled hair. Her hand was raised, poised to knock again, but she stood perfectly still. Her head tilted slightly, as though she were listening for something on the other side. Suddenly, the door to 3B opened, but it didn't swing inward. It slid, noiselessly, like it was being sucked into the darkness beyond. The woman stepped inside, her movements stiff and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. The door closed behind her. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the landlord's office demanding answers. I told you, he said, narrowing his eyes. That unit is empty. No, it's not, I snapped. Someone's been in there. I saw her walk in last night. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. Listen, if you're messing with me, I'm not. He stared at me for a long moment before pulling a set of keys from his desk. Fine, let's check it out. The hallway was eerily silent as we approached 3B. The light under the door was gone, as was the faint hum I'd convinced myself I'd been imagining. The landlord unlocked the door and pushed it open. The stench hit us first, rotting meat, metallic and sour. I gagged, covering my mouth as we stepped inside. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. But the floor was wrong. The wood near the window was warped and blackened, as if it had been burned. I told you, the landlord muttered, shaking his head. Nothing here. I turned to leave but stopped when I noticed something under the window. A piece of paper partially hidden by the warped wood. I crouched, my heart pounding, and pulled it free. It was another note written in the same jagged handwriting. It's your turn now.